Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at the spleen. Now the spleen is the largest lymphatic organ. It is the filter for your blood basically, so it deals just like with the lymph nodes. It deals with filtration. The lymph nodes filter lymph, whereas the spleen filters blood. Now just like the lymph node, it is a capsulated organ, so what you have out here at the edge is a dense irregular connective tissue capsule. In some cases it might look like it's a fibromuscular capsule, like it has smooth muscle in it. And that's partially at least because it will have blood vessels passing through the capsule into the interior. Okay, so what happens is that there is one blood vessel and one artery that comes in to the spleen at the hilus, and this blood vessel then splits off and enters and splits off throughout the capsule and then enters into the interior of the spleen through the trabeculae. So what you're seeing out here right now is the capsule. As you can see here, the capsule invades into the interior, invaginates into the interior in various places along the way. Okay, so we have lots of these trabeculae passing into the interior. Here's another good example, goes fairly deep in. Now, you will notice that inside this trabecula, there is in fact a blood vessel, okay? So the blood vessel that enters the spleen splits up through the capsule and then enters the interior through the interior of the trabeculae. So again, here's a trabecula. On the inside, you can see there's a blood vessel passing through. We can follow that into the interior and see more of it over here. Okay. Now eventually that blood vessel will split off and enter smaller areas and become smaller and smaller until eventually enters into the white pulp. And so what you're seeing here in the very basophilic regions right here, they look like nodules, and they are in fact nodules. These are splenic nodules. They are a little different than typical nodules that you would find, but they're still basically aggregations of lymphocytes. Okay, so these very basophilic areas, those are splenic nodules. Okay, and this is also referred to as the white pulp. Okay, so the white pulp is composed of lymphatic nodules, or the splenic nodules, which actually wrap themselves around blood vessels. You're seeing one right here, for example. There's a blood vessel there. There's a blood vessel there. Now that blood vessel is surrounded by something called the PALS, or the periarterial lymphatic sheath. And so this is kind of a continuous wrapping, I guess, of this blood vessel, a small arteriole that is wrapped around by lymphocytes. That's forming the periarterial lymphatic sheath. And periodically that periarterial lymphatic sheath kind of expands into one of these follicles or nodules. Okay, so this is also referred to as a follicle frequently. Okay, so let me maybe try to see if I can find a good spot for us to start, maybe when we zoom in. So right now we're looking at the lowest magnification I have. This is at 40x. So again, you cannot see the whole organ here. And I'm going to zoom into 100x. So what you're seeing here is a trabecula, so connective tissue, dense irregular connective tissue with a blood vessel on the inside. Now what I want you to notice is that this blood vessel and this trabecula kind of continue on in this direction. And so what you have here is kind of longitudinal section through a blood vessel and through a trabecula here that continues on until it enters into this splenic nodule. Okay, and so you see this the arteriole entering in and actually splitting off into multiple arterioles, and they will all be wrapped by this periarterial lymphatic sheath, which is lymphatic tissue, basically lots of lymphocytes. And so in here what we're seeing is a kind of a splenic nodule forming around this. Now these splenic nodules that you see here, the white pulp, are very characteristic of the spleen. And so the difference between these and the typical nodules is right there. These structures right here, these are arterioles, which pass through the splenic nodules. These are referred to as central arteries or central arterioles, and that's the characteristic feature here. Okay, you're not going to find nodules anywhere else in the body that have blood vessels passing through them, except in the spleen. Okay, so if you're seeing a nodule but there's a blood vessel passing through it, you know you're looking at the spleen. It's as simple as that. Okay, so let's just go back again to, where was that one? There it is, the trabecular blood vessel. Let's take a look at this at a higher magnification. So let's kind of put that into the middle here. And let's go to 400x. So right here we can see that there's a blood vessel here. You can see red blood cells. They're staining orange here. Okay, so these red blood cells are into the interior of this blood vessel. Around the outside I can see multiple layers of smooth muscle. So it makes me think this is probably an artery, a small artery passing through. Okay. And you can see it's kind of an irregular shape because it actually is branching off. So there's a branch point going off in this direction. The branch point going off in this direction, you can actually see right here, a longitudinal section through an arteriole passing away from it. And some of these cells that you can see here kind of going across up and down on this slide. In here, for example, that's smooth muscle. Now, because we're looking at a longitudinal section through this blood vessel, this is the outer, that tunica media of that arteriole. What we have here is that smooth muscle is going to look like it's a longitudinal section. Okay? And what you're seeing is just kind of the edge of that tunica media here. Okay? And I like this one because you can see how this arteriole passing through this trabecula here would enter into this white pulp and form this central artery here. You can kind of see it splitting off into multiple arterioles as it enters this white pulp. Okay, so we got these two blood vessels. Again, still longitudinal section here. Showing up, here it is again in cross section. Okay, so again, a very small blood vessel, just an arteriole, a couple of layers of smooth muscle around the outside, tunica media. Okay, and again, lots of lymphocytes surrounding it. So again, this is a very basophilic region. This is the white pulp. And in contrast to this region here, which is the red pulp. Okay, so basically, once the blood filters through the white pulp, so once all these arterioles pass through a certain amount of this lymphatic tissue, and there's some filtration and exposure going on there, so that anything that's in the bloodstream that can activate these lymphocytes is going to be able to do this. The contents of this blood vessel, this arteriole, will then open up into a capillary bed of the sinusoids that we talked in the previous lab. And so what you're going to have are these open spaces filled with red blood cells. Those are the splenic sinuses. And then in between them, the more solid parts, the more areas with more nuclei and fewer red blood cells would be the splenic cords. And so again, what we have here, for example, would be a splenic cord. Again, wherever you're seeing lots of red blood cells, you're seeing sinuses. So here, for example, is likely to be a splenic sinus. But around the outside of that is the splenic cord. Okay, so again, blood is passing through the sinuses, like this one here. Wherever you're seeing lots of red blood cells and not much else, not too many nuclei, that would be the interior of a blood vessel. And then the cords would be the more solid looking material out here, where you might periodically notice, like for example in here, there are red blood cells in this, but there's also a much more solid feel to this. So this would be a splenic cord. And again, that's the red pulp. And right here, that's the white pulp. And again, here's a central artery. Okay, so that tells you that this nodule here is a splenic nodule. So you're not going to see this sort of an arrangement with blood vessels passing through through a nodule anywhere else in the body. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand the structure of the spleen.